Namaste, Sai Ram to all of you. I offer my most grateful pranams at the divine lotus feet of our beloved Sai. Before I begin and before I forget, I want to offer my heartfelt thanks to our lovely hosts here, Brother Balaji and Anu, for hosting us, for inviting us, for giving us this opportunity to share our experiences and perspectives of this divine teacher who has continued to inspire our lives and the lives of millions of people around the globe. It's always my greatest privilege and honor to be able to share a podium with you all, to have an audience and to share and talk about the teachings of Bhagavan Sri Satya Sai Baba. So allow me to share a few thoughts. I will do so for the next 40-45 minutes or so, and then we will open up for questions and answers. You're welcome to either type your questions, and though I don't have a laptop in front of me at this point, I prefer sitting near the altar, but our brother Balaji has, and he could read it out to me, or you could, when the time comes, he could unmute and you could ask questions. Let's treat it as a simple family gathering, and I know it's virtual space. Virtual space is, we're still getting used to the idea, even though it's 2 years old, but nevertheless it's still a new idea. But I'm sure you all understand that once we mention the name Sai and greet each other as Sai Ram, or we listen to a couple of bhajans, then immediately all of us open our hearts and then we connect in that dimension. I don't think distance really matters in that dimension. Even time doesn't matter. And therefore, we are together. So thank you for joining in for this satsang. As devotees of Baba, many of us have been his devotees for many years. Some of us are new, perhaps, but there are many in this group. I know personally, I've met you all in the last 3 years, or rather, not last year, I guess. Again, we had a virtual meet, but before that, I've had the privilege and the honor of meeting you all in that lovely hall with that the new chair that you had of Swami. I still remember. It was one of the best chairs I've ever seen. And so we have fond memories, Maya and I. Maya is my wife, and both of us have very fond memories of spending time with you all. And I know many of you have been devotees for a very long time, with splendid and wonderful experiences. And like I do for myself, especially as years go by, every year goes by, I become more and more quote unquote strict, if you will, and ask myself, so what have I changed? How have I changed? What is it that I carry now, other than the label that I have been a devotee of Baba for 20 years or 30 years or 40 years? Believe it or not, in my wife's case and my case, we have been devotees for 40 plus years, since 1979. And in her case, ever since her birth. So the point is, we ask ourselves, so how are we different from those who may not have been exposed to Baba's teachings, from those who have not seen him or heard him? Are our lives different? Is the quality of our lives different? Are our perceptions to everyday matters different? Do we stand above the crowd as Swami would have wanted us, perhaps? Only for our own enrichment, not for any other purpose. Do we feel more enriched? Or have we made Sai Baba another God who's somehow going to rescue us at some point and nobody knows when? when we say, Swami will take care of everything, and we continue living the same old life, watching our same old television shows, having our same little addictions to food or sleep, or just live our lives without really any real transformation. So I think it's time for us as Sai devotees to look into the mirror, each one of us. That's what these satsangs are about. So I'm not here to tell you that Baba is somehow going to save you and he's the avatar who has come to, and all of that glorious things that we would like to hear. I cannot, simply because I have not understood yet the mystery and the magnificence of what an avatar represents. I have still barely got to understand this amazing phenomenon that we call Sai. But I can talk about something of how his teachings has enriched my life, and I look into the mirror and ask myself, how can I allow that teachings to flow even more freely through my thoughts, through my words, through my deeds. And therefore, I urge each one of you to do the same, only because at the end of the day, we become enriched with such introspection, with such self-examination. Every teacher, I believe, and especially so with our beloved Bhagwan, has walked the earth with the hope of being a role model. Not with the intention that people are somehow going to pray to them and make yet another God, but with the hope of being a role model to everyone, you, me, every ordinary human being, as we know, call ourselves, we are just ordinary human beings, to show us the lesson that within this ordinary human being lies an extraordinary potential. Each one of us have that potential. It is a different matter whether we have given ourselves a chance for that potential to express itself. And to me, the role of a teacher like Sai, a beloved avatar, if you will, like Sai, is to take a human body like yours and mine, a frail human body with a limited lifespan, the same body that can fall sick, that can become old, that can feel hunger and thirst, the same body that undergoes change from childhood to young adults and being an adult and old age and so on. It's the same body that he adorned, and yet the spirit was so vast that expressed itself through that frail body. Just to show us that you and I have that potential in our lives, to explore that potential and to allow that potential to find expression. It is very easy for us, my dear brothers and sisters, for us to sit back and say, no, that is all philosophy. I am just a simple person. I am humble. And we put a cloak of humility around us, a cloak of devotion around us, thinking that is humility and thinking that is somehow devotion, waiting for some God to rescue us, waiting and believing that I am simply nothing. I am an insignificant soul. I am nobody. It sounds very genuine, but just hold on to that thought for a moment. If we have entertained such a thought, or if we feel inclined to entertain such thoughts when life becomes difficult, when challenges become strong, and when we have a choice to practice values or compromise on values, when you say, no, that is all for great souls, I am not like that, and therefore it's okay for me to compromise on a value, because I have to survive, I have to pay my bills, I can't do all those big things, I will just do what is practical, and we compromise under the cloak of humility or this devotion. We might, we may not, but satsangs like these are where we need to face these hard truths. Think of Arjuna for a moment. Yes, it is a story which is 5,000 plus years ago and it may not be relevant. The story may not be relevant, the event may not be relevant, but the subject, the context is very much relevant. Why? Because Arjuna is in the middle of a battlefield when what is demanded from him is action. Because he is a warrior, his duty is called for. Determination and strength and courage is called for. And at that point, instead of jumping into action, which he has trained all his life for, he hesitates. He says, no, maybe I don't need to do this. Maybe this is not right. And then he brings about a philosophy of how I don't want all this. I would rather take up sannyasa than fight this war and so on. And if you read the Bhagavad Gita, the first chapter of the Bhagavad Gita and the 11 chapters of the 11 verses of the second chapter, it's Arjuna Vishada Yoga. Even though the second chapter is called Sankhya Yoga, the first 11 verses of that, Arjuna is continuing. What? His tale of woe, self-pity, how wise he is in making the decision of not to fight. I don't want all this politics. I'll just keep quiet and watch things happen. I am not interested. This was Arjuna's attitude. Sometimes you and I do that as well. These are very much questions in my mind. So I'm not here to preach. And if I sound like that, please know that that's certainly not the intention. The intention is self-introspection. So when Arjuna is full of that, is Krishna stopping him? Is Krishna cajoling him and saying, no, Arjuna, don't think like that. Please listen to me. No, he doesn't do that. Krishna stays silent. And Arjuna is full of I, me and mine, playing the card of low self-esteem under the cloak of humility, devotion, sannyasa and all those virtues he preaches to Krishna. Krishna keeps quiet. The voice of God is not heard when all of this is displayed. When what is actually required is action, and instead of action, when words are just displayed without any action, the voice of God is not heard, and so Krishna's voice is not heard. Then ultimately desperate, not knowing what to do, Arjuna says, I don't know, you guide me, tell me what to do. And then Krishna whips up the warrior in Arjuna. Right? Akirtikaram, anarejustam, he scolds him, he reprimands him. He says, this is not what a warrior should. You'd rather die than live like this. Wake up and answer. Answer the call of your duty. And thus begins the beautiful teaching, the dialogue between Arjuna and Krishna. Krishna did not teach the Bhagavad Gita to the sages that were there in his lifetime, in Krishna's lifetime. Greatest of sages were there in his lifetime. Enlightened sages walked the earth. Krishna knew them. Krishna could have resorted for his greatest teachings to these enlightened beings, to the rishis, to the sannyasis. But he chose a warrior. Warrior is a man of action. And he chose to give the highest wisdom, which is represented in the Gita, to a man of action. Rama had all rishis in his lifetime. Greatest teachers, Vashishta, Durvasa and so on. And yet he chose to have Hanuman by his side. Why? Hanuman was a man of action. Well, not technically a man, but Vanara of action. Action is the key to being close to an incarnation. You and I can philosophize on Sai's teachings. We can build a philosophy of life in general. We can theoretically tune into the highest Vedantic principles and philosophies, enter into discussions. But if that doesn't transform into action, if I don't take a value and translate it into my everyday life, whatever and however that means to each one of us, then we fall short. Then the voice of God is not heard. What is heard is silence. Krishna folds his hand and waits, waiting for that, the man of action within us or the woman of action within us to arise and say, guide me, I'm ready to act. Tell me what to do. Our blessing has been that in this avatar, in this incarnation, Sai is so gracious that he has assumed we are going to hesitate to act. And therefore, he has not even waited for you and I to ask. He has poured us with his wisdom, with his principles in life, and say, bring this into your life. Not to make me another god or to spread my mission or message, none of that. No avatars needed that. Sai certainly doesn't need that. But what he wanted was you and I to empower our lives, to enrich our lives. And watching us enrich our lives, our children feel empowered, our children feel enriched. Are we role models for our children? Do we teach empowerment, enrichment of lives and principles and values through our actions to our children? Or do we just preach them by words and our actions are completely different? Each one of us need to ask ourselves that question. A simple value like truth, satya, what does it mean to you? Write it down. What does it mean to your spouse? Ask her to write it down or him to write it down. What does it mean to your child? Ask your children to write it down. You all can discuss it. You can't push your definition of value onto your children or onto your spouse. You cannot. But you can listen to their definition. But whatever the definition of truth at that moment in life may be, the question is not how well you defined it, or who is right and who is wrong, or what is the actual definition. That is not the aim. The aim is whatever your definition is, whatever your understanding of truth is, are you practicing it? Whatever is that, whatever that understanding is, are you able to practice it uncompromisingly? Or are you saying, that is all good, that I am not Raja Harishchandra, I am simply Sunder, I cannot practice like Raja Harishchandra? Then I have a very poor understanding of my own potential. And then if I don't practice it because I have somehow justified myself in being a very ordinary person and cannot practice this value like truth, then I am not really allowing Sai to express himself through me. And his avatar, his incarnation, his idea of being a role model becomes redundant. And then we falsely sometimes satisfy ourselves just by singing bhajans, doing virtual pujas or rituals and say, okay, I have done my puja, I have praised him, and therefore he is happy and somehow he is going to bless me. We create a Santa Claus out of a real guru who walked the earth. We put him up in a cloud and create a distance between us and him. Whereas every time and every moment of his teachings and the essence of every discourse is, there is no difference between you and me. You have me in you. Why do you search for me elsewhere? How do we awaken then that divinity? How do we become role models of being Sai devotees to our children? Never mind the world. First to ourselves, of course, And then to our children who are looking up. Many parents ask me, why are my children not as devoted as we are? How can we make them devotees of Swami? How can we make them attend these SSC classes or this and that? How do we make them practice values? Very simple. How do you think Baba made youngsters like me, who came from Mumbai, who wanted to go to the Pune Institute of Films, whose only dream was to act in movies? How did he make me interested in deep spirituality, Vedanta, Upanishads, yoga, meditation, and self-realization and actualization? How did he put me on this path? How? By preaching? That, yes, perhaps, but that was a very, very small percentage. As a youngster, what appealed to me most about Baba, especially because I didn't know him at all before, my families were not devotees of Baba. What appealed to me most was his actions every day. I asked myself again and again, how can a villager raised in a village dropped out of school? I met his colleagues in 79. Some of them and many of them were still alive in the villages. They were regular villagers. And when I asked them, they said, I don't know, Sai Baba just got lucky, he became rich. That's all they could come up with at that moment. And I said, somebody who grew with such people who just felt it was okay to be ordinary, how did he become extraordinary? What was that drove him? What was that mysterious power that spoke through him, that acted through him? What inspired that young boy to become Satya? And for that young boy to carry on that mission unflinchingly, uncompromisingly. That's what I woke up every day to when I saw Sai in action. When I saw him in 79, he was well beyond 50. He was more of 58, 59 years old. And even then he had that young, boyish enthusiasm, that fiery determination to carry out what he set out to do. Never once was a moment where he felt depressed or let down, or at least I didn't see that. So to me, I realized here is a great teacher who is tapping into a resource within him that is unending in its capacity to give. Did that come from television shows that he watched perhaps? Or where did that inspiration come from? Did it come from magazines he read, from the books he read? Who were the authors that he read? What was the kind of pujas he must have done to derive that inspiration? What was in his room? What is the secret behind Sai Baba's this kind of unending enthusiasm? Was a question in my young heart at that time. And so when I got a chance, I told him, I want to be in your room. And he said, sure, come from tomorrow. And in the months that followed, I saw something that opened not only my eyes, but my heart, my spirit. In a small room which is 10 feet by 12 feet, in a bedroom that was even smaller and darker, dingier, if you will, with barely a light, a single bulb to light up the room, thick mosquito nets on the windows that kept it very dark, cold stone walls like a prison. Of course, they were painted brightly, thank God, but it was stone walls nevertheless. One single chair in the room, one single bed in the bedroom, a very small, tiny little bathroom which was barely 3 feet by 4 feet, probably smaller than the shower stalls that you and I may have in our own bathrooms today in the US, with no window. This master lived. Were there books in his room? Was there a TV in his room? No. What was in his room then? Boxes, donations by people, clothes, shoes, old clothes, handkerchiefs, little perfumes, whatever people thought they wanted to give Baba, they gave. And he would say, keep it, keep it, keep it. Because he will find somebody to give it to. Many gifts he gave us. He said, oh, you like this perfume? Take it, use it. And foolishly we would say, oh my gosh, what did you get? What did I get? And we would compare perfumes that we would got. Swami would have handed it out when he opened a box. And he looked at us as standing with young boys. He will say, okay, you take one, you take one, you take one, you take one. Handkerchiefs, shaving creams, soaps, Cami soap or something like that was a big thing those days. And so Swami would give, yeah, take. Oh, foreign soap we had. Swami gave us. That was what was in his room. It was more of a storehouse. And there was space for him to sit, there was space for him to lie down. This is the Sai Baba you see traveling in Mercedes Benz outside, sitting on big thrones outside. You would think, oh, he's living like a king. He did not. Trust me. I speak to you as a direct witness of how he lived. Yes, towards the last 10 years or 15 years of his life, he did move to a bigger place by the Purnachandra Auditorium, which is now known as the Yajur Mandir. I haven't seen the mandir. I haven't been inside. But from what pictures I see, it was a much bigger place. And you might say, aha, see, eventually he also became comfortable. And I would say no, but then he was in a wheelchair. So this teacher really did not know comfort, did not seek comfort. He did not seek the little things that you and I get obsessed with, possessed with. What brand, what color, what style, what variety. How can I be different from somebody else? What kind of antique piece can I get in our homes? And we get caught up. It's nice to have that, there's no doubt about it. But we get caught up. We define ourselves, we define somebody else based on the little things. But in the long run, we forget what is more important in our lives. And to me as a young boy, what inspired me was the actions of Sai. And then of course came his teachings. Because then I saw that here was a teacher, here was someone who spoke what he believed, who did what he believed, who never compromised on who he was, who was not ashamed that he had dropped out of school, who was not ashamed that he knew one language, he spoke publicly in the language that he was born in. He was never ashamed. He was never afraid or ashamed, or he never had a complex because he was not tall enough like somebody else or fair enough like the foreigners, quote unquote, who would visit him from Australia, from New Zealand and from US and Europe and all over the place. In fact, it was opposite. He was beaming with self-confidence, beaming with pride of what he was doing, beaming with selflessness, beaming with the idea of service, love, a sense of deep contentment. There was a time I remember when my father actually donated a check. He came and threw the check at me. And he said, did I ever ask you or your father for donation? He got so angry with me. I've taken care of you as my own family and you are here donating to me. I know when the money should come and from where it should come. Your father has worked the whole life so hard. What is he trying to impress? Why does he want to donate the money? My father wanted to donate because he said everybody else is donating. If I get a room in the ashram and I don't donate, what will others think of me? And thus he wrote the check to Swami. And Swami threw it back at me. He said, take your luggage and get out of here. If this is what you have understood of me. I pleaded with him and tore the check in his presence. So he never compromised. He said, my hand will never be like this, asking anyone for anything. It will always be like this. How, I thought. From where would he get that, I thought. Because at the time when we were there and for the years that followed, and eventually when I actually worked at the Central Trust Accounts section where my father was as well, I saw that funds were just coming in enough to meet the demands. There was never a surplus of funds. And one thing that touched me most is he never waited for the funds to come in order to launch a project. He never said, wait, let the money come, then I will start doing selfless service. He didn't say that. He never thought about that. He kept pushing the boundaries of possibilities constantly. And there was hard work throughout. Some people might say, for those of you who know him, and perhaps know part of the picture, when they say the water project attracted millions of dollars, they will say, aha, look at that. He started a project and there were Japanese and Americans and everybody donated. So if I can get donations, I can also do that project. But wait a minute. That water project of Sai was not just started 1 year ago in 1993 or 4 when it really took off. It had started well in the early 80s for more than 10, 12 years, because I was there when it began, when Baba would send us with a couple of engineers, go into the village and dig bore wells, he would say. Find out the feasibility of water, find out where the water is needed, dig bore wells. I want water for villages. I want water for the villages around Puttaparthi, because that was a drought prone area. So his idea of giving water for the villages was a grand vision, but it took tiny steps. 4 people going into a village, finding feasibility. How much will it cost to build a bore well? Okay, let's build a bore well one at a time, one single. You know what's a bore well? You just dig a little deep into the water and put a hand pump or an electric pump, depending on the feasibility at that point. And then people could come and pump water and take it home to their homes. So that's how it started. And so when I would come back and report to Swami, and Swami would say, yes, we must give water to all the villages. As a young boy, I would think he's dreaming. I mean, where is the money? Where are the resources? Anyway, it's a chance to be with Swami, to talk to him and to do it. And so we did it. And then many years later, it finally got the attention it deserved. It is the same thing with super specialty hospital. When I hear people say, oh, if I had the money, I can also start such hospital. Wait a minute. He did not start the hospital because he had the money. He started the hospital many decades ago. Free medicine was his dream, was his vision. Because his mother told him, start a hospital for these villages. He said, let me start. And what kind of a hospital? Free. Not for once, he said, how can healing be a business? And that hospital remained small, a hospital for a longest time, for more than 15, 20 years. The quality was never compromised. Doctors still came, offered their services in that small little hospital. And then the time came for that to find fruition. What I learned from Baba is when you uncompromisingly dedicate yourself fearlessly and put your values into action, whatever those values are. That's why I said define these values, and then it doesn't matter what your definition is, but you begin to implement that definition uncompromisingly in your life, not with the expectation of, oh, this is going to be achieved now or then, but it is simply because that is how the process is. There will be a time when that will find fruition to the extent that it will go far, far beyond what you have ever imagined. Education was the same thing. Did he just like rotate his hand or whisk an university into existence? I wish he did, but he didn't. There was hard work, labor, dedication, determination. Again, an uncompromising attitude towards excellence in education. A value that education should be free. The idea that education, holistic education, is where spirituality has to be incorporated in along with modern education, where children and youngsters need to take time to think of higher things in life, higher dimensions of life, to look within themselves and think about the self that has infinite potential. And that vision started with the first ladies' college in Anantapur in 1967, 66 or 67, or maybe 68, don't quote me on that, but somewhere around that time, where there were very, very few colleges for women. So right there he set an example of not only women empowerment, women education, but the idea of free education. Ishwaramba High School, a small little high school, was set up in Puttaparthi, I believe maybe a little before that. But it took more than 20 years eventually for the third college to come up and then the university to be formed. Everything in life requires hard work. So when you are suffering or when you are going through a difficult time, don't look at Baba and say, oh, it's easy for you, Baba, you're God, you wave hands and everything happens. No, he worked hard. Does that make him less divine? To me, it makes him more divine, because he had within him the powers to manifest anything he wanted in life. And yet, he did not. Because he set an example. Think for a moment, if he had waved his hand and created all these magnificent institutions and he walked away, would that have changed anything in you and me? No. It would have made us more convinced that how pathetic we are and how he is divine and how therefore he can will it and we cannot. It would have created more of a distance between us and him. And therefore he decided to work like us and show us how through ethics, through values, through determination, through discipline, you can manifest anything. It does not matter if you don't have the education. It does not matter if you do not have money or wealth. It does not matter what your culture is, what your background is. None of that matters. We have created this drama around what is required to be successful, what is required to do big things in life, and we have formed a crutch around us, many, many crutches. One of them is education. Oh, I need to be well qualified. Without a degree, without a certification, who will recognize these days? So we have built that, and we feel that is necessary. Oh, without good looks, who will become popular? And so we have built a crutch of somehow I need to be good looking, or somehow I need to do this, and thus we have all these crutches. I need to be and there should be a good networking facility, or I need to have some money at least in the bank, otherwise how can I do good to others? We have built all this so-called things which appear real because you and I have made it real. But then an avatar comes, Krishna comes. Krishna is born as a cowherd. He is born to a king, but he is born in a prison. He is whisked away from the kingdom, raised in the villages, and he had every reason. Krishna had reasons to be just a cowherd, Gopala. But from there he became Madhusudana, slayer of evil, the emperor. Right? Oh no, that is all old stories. We don't even know if it's true. Okay. Jesus Christ, not that old, relatively recent, born in a manger. His birth record not even recorded because the king was destroying kids. At that time when children were born, he was killing, so they didn't record his birth. He was raised as a son of carpenter, and his job was to become just yet another carpenter. But that didn't happen. How could a cowherd become an emperor? How could a carpenter become the son of man, whose life is inspiring more than 1 billion people today on earth? How? So when I was being raised, I saw and heard these stories, and I thought they were just tales which has no relevance. I mean, that's not practical. Of course you can't do great things with just like that. And yet again an avatar comes, is again born in a village, the most drought prone area you can ever think of, a place that was not even on the map of India. I know I say this many times, I never get tired, because you and I have to remind ourselves time and again, every time we have an excuse to become ordinary. The most extraordinary people simply took the same ordinary things in life and turned it around. So when I spoke to children a little while ago, I said, pay attention to the little ordinary things in life, the small things. Every one of us, you, me, every one of us, with no exceptions in this virtual meeting at this moment, or if it's recorded and you're watching later, everyone has an infinite potential within. It's our choice. Do we want to close doors and wait for somehow yet another avatar, yet another God to come and somehow rescue us? And we get caught in whether we are calling him God or not God, or how should we call him, what should we do, what are the rituals we should do, and we get caught up so much and we miss the whole message, the most empowering message of Sai, which is courage, fearlessness, expressing divinity from within. He proved to us in his life, and I'll end with this thought and we'll open it up for questions or comments. He proved with his life that it is not money that makes you successful or gives you true happiness. It is not just education that gives you success or true happiness. I'm not saying these are not bad, but he proved that it is not these. But it is when you allow your own uniqueness, your purpose in life, when you follow your heart and you allow that to find expression, then true happiness, true success, true manifestation begins to occur and divinity begins to express itself. I believe this strongly. I just shared it with kids that you and I have our own individual purposes in life. We need to find what that is. The young Sai found it when he was 13, 14 years old. So if you have a 13, 14-year-old in your home or a 16-year-old in your home, don't tell them to become like someone else. Please don't tell them, oh, look at this person, become like this person, become like that person. Tell them, find your heart. What do you want to do in life? Ask them. Allow them to explore the infinite potential within them. Don't push your fears upon your child. If I am afraid of socializing, don't tell the children, oh no, don't mix with these Westerners, we don't know what they are. Don't put your fears on them. Don't color their lives with your fears. Allow them to experience life. Let us break these boundaries of Indians versus Westerners and this, and let's, Bhagavan has taught us the religion of love. Let's open our hearts. There is only one world. Nations are many, but earth is one. How can you say, I love this nation more than this nation, or this nation is more? That is only a reflection of your division in your mind. Why don't we love the earth as a manifestation of divine consciousness? Beings are many, breath is one. Why don't we embrace that one breath that flows in and out of every human being, every living being? Stars are many, sky is one. Why can't we embrace oneness? Why can't we allow the value of oneness to find its reflection in our lives? Why can't that be selflessness, gratitude, love? And when children see you live that life, find happiness, they get inspired. And they begin to, at some level, begin to emulate those principles. And thus, Sai begins to live in every heart and will do so for centuries to come. Thank you so much for your patience. I will hand the mic over back to Balaji and see if there are some comments or questions that you have, and let Sai guide the session further. Sai Ram.
So you just started off with that actually, the whole session. It's time for us to change rather than just doing the regular routine life that we are leading, thinking that Swami will take care of everything. Like, very simple things as, eating or drinking tea or coffee or certain habits that we just evolve with. What is that needs to be changed? Things like fasting, people cut down on sugar, salt, whatever it might be. But what is that needs to be changed with those routine habits that we have been inculcated for years? And is it individual or is it universal? It's something that it's just through the individual, or it's something we have to think beyond that level. And also, I want to know, how do we make time in this life for that change?
Thank you for that question, Purnima and Arvind. When we talk of change, we talk of spiritual changes. It's not the big things that somehow need extra time. It is the attitude towards what you're doing every day. What do you see when you look at yourself in the mirror? Do you see an ordinary soul, or do you see divinity in action through your body? And if you don't, then ask yourself, why am I not seeing divinity in me? Why am I not? And if that attitude begins to change, if you begin to have self-respect and love for yourself and your family and your values, like that's why I said one of the greatest way for us to begin to incorporate change in our lives, when we say change, is to bring values into our everyday life and say, how can I implement those values in life? And you don't need time for that. If value like patience, for example, patience gets tested by children, by co-workers, by everyday things in life. If a value like equanimity is tested almost every day at many levels, right? A simple thing could be you're sitting to watch a television and the power goes off or the internet drops and you're like, oh, we planned so much and it's gone. So a simple equanimity test like that, or it could be some other big tests. So we have these little tests where the values that we want to incorporate in our lives gets tested, and so those are the moments which become eye openers. Can I then therefore practice my value? Am I working for a company that is actually harming or creating products that are actually harming somebody's health? But am I going home saying, no, I am doing my job, I don't know about all that? Or am I saying, why am I part of an organization which is actually causing something else? I don't know. You need to ask, each one of us need to ask that question. So it's individual to a large extent, but when every individual begins to work, then it becomes a universal change. What we do is we wait for somebody else to change sometimes, and we don't. Why can't that person smile at me? Why can't that person change? Why is the organization doing this? Why is so and so doing that? So we are ready to point fingers at everything around us, but ask, wait a minute, let everybody do what they want. What am I doing with my life? How can I bring empowerment and enrichment into my life? Is the quality of my life changed? Is even simple things like the TV shows that I watch, have I changed? Or do I still watch the same old, which harbors the same old energies of emotions and anger and hatred and violence? Am I constantly reiterating the same old things? Would I watch that kind of film with Baba next to me? Have I changed that? And if not, then why am I not changing? I'm not talking of big changes. It is the small things that when we become mindful of and when we change, then children watch us. They begin to incorporate that as well. They begin to change as well. And you and I get more and more closer to the divinity. Swami didn't say take 1,000 steps and I will take 10,000 steps. He said take one step. Take one step and I will take 1,000 steps towards you. One step means one small step. Yes, you mentioned food. So ask yourself, have I changed my diet at all? Swami never touched sugar in his life, right? He might have when he was very young, but eventually he didn't. Okay, he might have. I said, I don't know, I can't. The Sai, I know him, I know of, never touched sugar in his life. Do we as devotees on his birthday How many of us offer more sugar to him? Why? Because we want to eat it. Knowing he never did it. He ate ragi for the greater part of his life. Do we eat that on his birthday? We don't. So my point is, it is easy for us to worship, but that worship, if it doesn't translate into, wait a minute, the Guru I worship, I consider as my everything, he doesn't touch sugar, his actions have shown that it is not good for health, so why am I not incorporating that into my body since you raised it? I'm saying simple things like that. You got to say, all right, I can't change it overnight, but let me take firm steps, one step at a time. And then when you start becoming healthy, then your children will be like, wow, I know what health is. They will know it. You don't have to preach them. You become role models, just like Swami was a role model for us youngsters, which really caused transformation in our hearts. I hope that was helpful. But thank you for that question. I do appreciate it.
Sai Ram, my name is Arjun, and I have like a few questions. So, like, why did Rama and Krishna, why did they choose like a man of action instead of like a man of knowledge who are like really wise?
Arjun, did you say Arjun?
Yeah.
Thank you, Arjun. That is a great question. Because a man of action is what is needed today. And as always, what is needed are men of action, women of action. Action means people who say, listen, I believe this, I'm going to put it into action. Not simply think of it and not do anything about it. Now, Arjun might say, someday I want to speak in front of 100 people and not be afraid. Right? Let's say Arjun thinks like that. He's sitting and closing his eyes and thinking he's in front of an audience and he's speaking. He feels happy. I'm just giving an example. But is that enough? Someday his parents say, Arjun, let's go. There's a public competition and they want you to talk in front of 500 people. Arjun was going to say, no. That was just my dream. I like the idea, but I'm never going to act on it. If you don't act on it, then that dream is of no consequence. But when you say, I've been waiting for this for a long time, I am nervous, I am scared, but you know what? I'm going to try and see if it really works. That action that you would take actually awakens the divinity within you. Because you have allowed what you really like, what you wanted to, what you entertained to find expression. That is why Krishna, Rama, Sai, even Sai, what is his main teaching is what? Go out and serve. Act. Don't talk about selfless service. Take time out of your selfish time, and time is a very limited resource. Take that time and offer it to somebody else. Right? So selflessness and all of that, if it doesn't translate itself into action, then it becomes worthless. Then the great teachers like Krishna, Rama and all of them sit quiet. Jesus didn't simply talk about selflessness and love. He said, you whip me, you crucify me, you do anything, but I will only say forgive them, for they know not what they do. That quality is something unimaginable today, but he showed it with action. Right? So it is when you act what you believe, you don't have to be rude, but you can be firm in what you believe. Listen, I believe in these values. I'm not going to compromise on these values simply because I want a pat on the back from my friends. My friends say, oh, come on, man, come on. But if there's something that you don't believe, don't get forced to do it. So men of action become true messengers of God. And therefore Krishna and Rama chose men of action as examples of enlightenment. If they are chosen, let us say, monks and renunciants and taught them, then all of us would say, oh, I'm not a monk, therefore that teaching of Gita does not apply to me. I am not a rishi, so that does not apply to me. We would have become even more lack in our willingness to comply to those teachings. But he said, no, I'm not teaching rishis and sadhus and sannyasis, I am teaching men of action. So he's not giving us a chance to say, oh, I am nobody. Each one of us, you are a warrior, I am a warrior. We have a whole life ahead of us and many lives ahead of us. And therefore, in this life, in this situation, how can I put my values into action? That empowers me. Yes, I can do it in spite of difficulties. That's why I said Swami worked hard to show that it is not easy to practice values, but true leaders are those who are men of action. Look around you and study the lives of people who really influenced everybody else. They are men of action. Whether it's Martin Luther King or Mahatma Gandhi, men of action. It was men of action who really achieved the biggest things in life.
So like, how do you get freedom from fear? Like when you're like scared of something, you're like, oh, I'm so scared of things. Then you like mind just like more like your mind just like keep on thinking about it, and you get in your fear it's like more and more like a big. Like how you just stop it and get rid of that fear for once and for all.
Someday I want to meet you, Arjun. You seem to be a really smart kid. Thank you. That's a wonderful question. Wonderful question. I often thought of it. So let me approach it in two ways. First thing, I want you to understand, and everyone listening to this understand, because it's a good question. There's a difference between fear and caution. So if I say fear should not be there, you can't just blindly say, oh, I'm not afraid of trucks coming and going. I'm just going to cross this highway and walk across a national highway foolishly, because that is throwing caution to the winds. And that is not fearlessness, that is foolishness, right? So please don't go home thinking, oh, then because I'm cautious, somehow I'm afraid. It is caution that prevents you to stick your fingers into a socket because you'll get a shock. It's caution, it's common sense. It's caution that prevents you from going and putting a hand into a bush without knowing if there's an animal or an insect there, right? That is caution, that's common sense. You wouldn't stick your hand into a beehive. That is not because you're afraid, it's caution. But then when you have ghosts in the closet, means there is a lot of fear in your imagination. You're never given it a chance. Like public speaking, like I mentioned. I'm afraid of public speaking. I don't know how these people face. I can never do it. Now, did you even try? Did you give a chance? Or maybe because you didn't click once, or you slipped once in your attempt to do so, you have made up your mind it's not for you, and you retreated back. So overcoming fear is number one, is facing the ghosts in your closet. So how do we do that? Let me give you an analogy. On a stormy night, like those fairy tales, Grimm's fairy tales. I don't know, you might probably never heard of that, Grimm's fairy tales. It's all a little horror stories they have. Anyway, the tale here is on a stormy night. You're caught in the rain. There's blinding lightning going on. There's heavy downpour, and you want to take shelter. And in this semi-forest place, when you're going, it's dark. You suddenly see a castle. And in that couple of lightning you see, it's scary. But then that's the only place you can take refuge. So you go in, and there's a huge door you have to open and step in, but it's pitch dark inside. You come out, there is storm outside. So it's a storm on one side, pitch dark on this side. You don't know what to do, but surely out of sheer exhaustion, you say, I want to go in. At that moment, there is fear, right? Which is true, which is real. How do we overcome that fear? The more we say, Ayyo, I'm afraid, Baba, please help me. Ayyo, I'm afraid, Krishna, help me. Ayyo, I'm afraid, Jesus, help me. Oh God, please help me. I'm afraid, please help me. Which is what we normally would pray. Would that work? I say it will not work. Why? Because you're constantly saying, I'm afraid, please help me. But I'm afraid. It is like Arjuna who told Krishna, I cannot fight, please help me, I cannot fight, I won't fight, please help me, I will not fight. Krishna just waited. Till Arjuna said, tell me what to do. Right? So every time we say, God help me, I'm confused, God help me, I'm afraid, guess what? You will end up with fear and confusion. Because you are blocking God out by saying, I am afraid. Okay, so what do I do then? I am really frightened. I don't want to go into this dark, dingy castle. I don't know what is inside. and I can't go out. It's raining. The lightning had strike me. So the fear is real in that quote unquote, absolutely real. What do? There is a door that is open. All right. Arjun listens to me, and I'm sure every adult is listening to me as well. There is a door that's open. What is that door? At that moment, I would close my eyes and say, am I alive at this moment? I know I'm afraid of dying if I go inside. Something might bite me or strike me inside. Outside, lightning might strike. I know I'm afraid of death and some great injury. But at that moment where I'm standing, am I alive? I take a deep breath. I close my eyes and say, am I alive? I know I'm terrified, right? I am terrified. Okay, I accept it. But am I alive at this moment? And the answer will come. Yes, I am alive. And the moment that yes, I'm right now, I'm alive. And so what will come out immediately following that would be, thank God, I'm alive at this moment. What happened then? At the point of greatest fear, you found a reason to be thankful. At the point of greatest fear, you found a reason to be thankful. Because you looked for it. And at that point, that seemed to be the only reason. Am I breathing? Are my legs okay? My hands okay? Am I alive? Yes, I am. Thank God. At this point, at least I'm alive. You are able to take a couple of deep breaths only because you opened your heart in gratitude. That will give you the strength to slowly creak open that big door. Take one step in. Is it still okay? Am I still alive? Yes. Thank God. And then you will take the second step and the third step. Before long, you will find your way to a little mastic. You would have lit a little candle in that castle, and then you would have found a shelter. Only because you found a reason to say that first, thank God. Thank God I'm alive. That had completely replaced your statement of, Ayo, I am afraid, please help me. Ayo, I am afraid, please help me. That is gone. It was replaced with thank God. Find a reason to be grateful in moments of real fear. Forget imaginary fear. At that moment, if I'm stuck in my bedroom and I have a sheet over my head and it's all dark and somehow I'm scared for some reason because of some movie I saw, I don't know. All I want to go into that blanket and ask myself, am I alive now? I say, thank God I'm alive. Thank you, I'm alive. And that changes the whole reality around you changes. From being, help me, I'm scared, I'm confused, I'm in the dark, to thank God. Gratitude is the greatest weapon. Gratitude is the greatest source of enrichment. Look for reasons to say thanks. And then it will become a habit to be only thankful. And when you're thankful, then the universe or God or Sai, however you want to call that, will give you more opportunities to say thanks. Oh, thank you. You'll get more gifts. Why? Because you have created a habit of saying thanks. More and more gifts come, and so you can say more and more thanks. We attract that into our reality. On the other hand, if I say, Ayo, I don't have this, I don't have that, I will wait for something to come. When that something comes, what have you created? A habit of waiting. So you will wait for something better to come. Because you have trained yourself to only complain, only to look. So when you train yourself to be in the fear, only fear will present itself. But at moments of fear, find a reason to say thanks. The fear will instantly disappear, and what will remain is just thanks. I hope I made sense. Thank you for that question, though.
Thank you so much.
We always hear in management and leadership of being authentic.
Yes.
I was just trying to draw a connection and say what is typically considered being authentic, and I would like to hear your views on it. Sai Ram.
Thank you for that point. Yes, authenticity, integrity. These are other words that is very close to this. The Swami would quote this from the Veda as the Vedic dictum. He would say, Manasya ekam, vachas ekam, karmanyekam, mahatmanam. Vachas anyat, karman anyat. Duratmanam. So that point is when the thought, word and deed are one, there is integrity in the person. That person is truly a great person. He doesn't have to become great. He is already great. But if the thoughts are in one direction, words are in one direction, the deeds are in one direction, then Duratmanam. So not even a normal person, it becomes worse than that. And therefore integrity, authenticity is very important. I think children look for authenticity. They're not looking for us to become philosophers. Authenticity, integrity is the key part of being Sai devotees. The Sai teachings are not and should never be reduced to dogmatism. This is how it should be done. That is how it should be done. Swami said this, it should be done like that. No, Swami opened the heart for you. He said Satya, Dharma, Shanti, Prema, Ahimsa. Very simple, 5 values, but that 5 values cover the entire scope of life. A chance to live life in its full majesty. But what do they mean to each one of us? What does it mean to a 5-year-old? What does it mean to a 20-year-old? What does it mean to a 40-year-old or an 80-year-old? It will mean different things because of their exposure. And when I say meaning, it's not some book learning, but it is from the heart. If you ask them to write down what do they truly believe, it will be different. But whatever it is right. There's no right and wrong. But if I tell my child, oh, that is not truth, this is also truth, that is also truth, then I am influencing and making it dogmatic. Let the child grow. And it will on its own find out, because you're also practicing the value of truth. He or she is also practicing the value of truth, and he will find that there is more to truth than they originally thought. And their understanding of truth will go. But by then what has happened, they have already practiced, and therefore they get more courage, more inspiration to continue to practice those values. And for every one of us, we find those values really, really draw respect, courage from everybody around us. I have always found that when I'm uncompromising, initially it doesn't fit into the picture sometimes, but then eventually there is great respect. For example, I do remember this humorously. I was at a Christmas lunch, if you will, that at work, right? People go for Christmas lunches. So it was a big gathering and I went for lunch. And my habit is not to leave food on the plate. I won't waste it. Because most of them are buffet lunches, right? You take what you want and you don't. I will not leave things on the plate. So we were all talking, and I had my manager and others, and we were all across the table, and we were all finishing up, and everybody paused after a while. They looked at me and said, Sunder, if you are really hungry, there's more food out there on the table. And I looked at my plate and I looked at the other's plate, because most of them, it's normal, I guess, for them to not finish eating. I don't know, it's just not in my case. That's not how Swami trained us or my parents trained me. It's just a value I believe in. I don't waste it on my plate. I don't want to be wasting it. So I just looked up and said, I come from a country where more than 10 million children die for this very food on that plate. There was silence. So we didn't see that coming. We didn't see that coming, man. That's awesome. That's big, man. That's cool, man. And then after that, for half an hour, people came one by one and said, wow, man, what you said changed my life. Wow, that was it. So you see, that's what I mean, is when you truly say and genuinely, then they begin to actually respect you for what you believe. So initially what turned out to be making fun turned it the other way around. What made that? It is because I didn't compromise. I didn't say, oh, what will people think if I lick my plate clean? I'm not licking, I was not really licking it. But so I will also waste some food. I could have, but then I compromised on my belief. I compromised on who I am. And therefore, how can I look into the mirror and say I don't waste food? How can I go home and tell my children don't waste food? Because I know I did it. Right? So I'm just giving an example. So when you truly become integral in your approach, if you will, if there's a term like that, or if you practice integrity, then you actually command a lot of respect. If not immediately, but in the long run. And that's what inspires you to carry on in what you believe. So thank you for that. The terms like authenticity and integrity, yes.
I know we spoke about the Bhagavad Gita to focus on the action and the man of action. But how should one disassociate himself from what the outcome is going to be, and what would be the true meaning of surrender in this situation? How would have Swami guided us on that? If we could hear your thoughts on that.
It's a great question. Thank you so much for asking that question. And I'm sure you're referring to the very famous oft-quoted verse of Karmanyevadikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana, where you do the action but not really concerned with the outcome of the action. And very often people have misunderstood that. I will share with you how I have made peace with it based on what I have learned from Swami. So I'm not going to quote him verbatim because I cannot. But over the years, as I've understood this concept of, wait a minute, you're saying don't focus on the outcome. Isn't that what we teach our children? I mean, if they're not working for better grades in the examination, what is going to be the motivation? Or if there is no progress in my career, then what is the point of getting into the career, and things like that. That's a very natural question that could crop up because we have educated ourselves think that there is always reward at the end, and the focus of the reward has to be your motivation for your work. That's how we have trained ourselves, that's how we have educated ourselves, that's how we have created a reality around ourselves. So what happens in that context is, because I'm so focused on what I'm going to get at the end of my action, the result, which is supposed to motivate me, but that becomes so important that in order to get that, I compromise on the quality of my action and somehow try to get that, because that's where my focus is, and the quality gets compromised. For example, if I am cooking a dinner, and I'm really not a good cook, but nevertheless, let's say Maya takes a risk and says, Sunder, can you help me in the kitchen while I'm doing this? Can you do this? I say, all right. While whatever dish I am cooking, if I am worried about whether people will like this, what I make or not, and I get so overwhelmed with the result of how it's going to be perceived by somebody else, which is, in other words, success or failure, if I am so caught up with that, it is very likely that I might forget to put the important ingredients that are important because I'm so caught up, yo, people like it, and what will they say, this, that, I am so nervous, and because of the outcome being not to my expectations, that fear, there's a very high probability that I'll compromise on the quality of what I would normally do. So the Bhagavad Gita says, don't worry about the outcome. Let go of that outcome. Then what do I focus on? Focus on the excellence of your action. What we miss here is focus on your effort. Let excellence guide your effort. Whatever things you're doing at this moment, let it be a reflection of excellence. Can I excel myself in what I'm doing? Then the Gita says, result will automatically take care of itself. Why are you worried about the result? If I'm training to be the best athlete, for the joy of that, and I'm just focused on the excellence of my training, and I give everything into my training, the result is already inbuilt into that journey of excellence. I'm already happy. And the outcome will naturally be an outcome as a reflection of that excellence that you have put in. So the whole idea of working or putting in action without worrying about the outcome is not suddenly to build some idea of detachment and things like that, as we normally understand, but it is actually saying, don't worry about, so get caught up with the end result, because you might compromise on the means to get to the end. Focus on the means, bring excellence into the means, the end will take care of itself. Don't worry about that. And that is what I saw even in Baba's life, that every act that he did had quality, had excellence in it. Every student, every devotee who knew him will vouchsafe for that. There was quality, there was excellence, there was a high expectation in small little things. And in that, everything else began to fall in place automatically. When he gave gifts, he paid full attention and made sure his giving was of the best quality. So once there was a Gujarat floods, and he had asked students in Anandpur, students in Vrindavan, students in Puttaparthi, he had sent word, let them give all their, whatever they want, they can donate for the flood victims. So students donated all over. He called some of us. And this is what he had to say. People have lost everything in that flood. They've lost their homes. They've lost their valuable positions. And you are giving them your torn bunions and underwears and pants and shirts? Are they going to be happy seeing these clothes? Did any one of you think of giving your new shirt and new pant? Idena nechkunnaru, yes. Is this what you learned from being with me? And for me, I was there, I was like, oh my God, how come it never struck me? I always thought, oh, this is, I don't like this shirt anymore. Let's give it away to Goodwill, we say, right? Let's give it to somebody. As if some undeserving person is going to get what I gave, a trash from my trash can. Guess what? The universe will also throw trash can at you. Because that's what the reality you have said. But if you give your very best, let me buy new clothes and give it to new people. Let me go and buy a coat this winter. A nice good coat, which I like. And then give it to somebody. Then the universe gives the best things to you because you're creating a cycle of excellence. So it was an excellence in every act that eventually takes care of the outcome. And that's, I hope that point was clear. Because if you get that, then you really will never bother about the outcome at all. Your joy will be in how can I make this effort more excellent. And that excellence and effort is a completion in itself. So sadhana practice is complete in itself. Just the joy of puja is complete. You're not doing puja to get somewhere. You're not singing a bhajan to get somewhere. You're not doing meditation to get somewhere. That is a practice complete in itself because you're focused on how can I better this and the joy in that. So the destination and the journey become one and the same.
I have a question for you, Sunder uncle. Why is Hanuman like Rama so much?
Why did he like Rama so much? Because when Valmiki writes a story, he says Hanuman couldn't believe that there could be a person who so firmly believes and values that he would give up his kingdom and come to the forest because his father said. A man who could stick to his values so much was, when Rama believed something, he would say, this is what I believe, that's it. Nothing is going to make me change my mind. Rama was very, very clear in his thinking, very strong in his determination. He was a warrior. He had no fear. And therefore Hanuman thought, oh my God, if I want a friend, if I want a God, he should be the one I should meditate on. And Hanuman found peace and serenity when he thought of Ram. And so Vanaras are monkeys who jump up and down, were all over the place. Hanuman had a lot of powers, but they were all uncontrolled. Like you have. We all have. Our thoughts are all over the place. Thoughts are very powerful. We can create reality with our thoughts. Right? But how do we get all of that under control? When Hanuman found Rama, the name Rama, the form of Rama, then all that energies came under control. And he was able to utilize it for great purposes in life. He jumped over the ocean, he found courage where there was a lot of doubt and confusion. He began to serve this God. That's why he found Rama so enchanting. Rama, one single man, Rama, took up the entire army of Ravana. Not once did Rama think, how can I fight Ravana and all his army? He said, no, I will fight because I am a warrior. My job is to fight. That bravery of Rama brought in Hanuman and all other strong Vanaras like Sugriva, Jambavan, and all the mighty warriors joined Rama's army and ultimately brought him victory. That's why Hanuman liked Rama.
Hi Ram, Sunder uncle, I'm Charvi. I have a question. So, how do you know Swami is listening to our prayers? Because sometimes it feels like Swami is listening, but other times it feels like Swami's pushing us to try more.
My question is, does it really matter? whether he's listening or not. What matters is, are you listening? Are you listening? When I pray, am I so caught up in talking to God that I forget to listen what even I am talking? For example, oh God, I want this, I want that, I have a big list for Christmas, I want this, I want this, I am asking, I think I am praying. I'm just giving a very simple, down-to-earth example. But if I start listening to myself, I might, like, wait a minute, I'm in the presence of God who knows what I want. What am I doing with this laundry list of things that I need? Here, you know best. You do what you want. You know my desires. You make it happen. Then God automatically listens. Why? Because you listened to your prayers. Many times we don't listen to our prayer. We get caught up in so much in talking and asking God that we get caught up in our asking. We get caught up in what we think we are praying. We are not listening. But when you listen, the inner Sai in you begins to manifest. Because when you listen, you become very mindful of your prayer. And in that mindful prayer, manifestation begins to happen. Believe me, anything we pray for, anything we meditate upon, with that mindfulness, manifests. There's no doubt about it. So yes, he is listening, but he will listen when you first listen. So stop asking and listen to your prayer. Thank you for that wonderful question.
Thank you, Uncle.
Johnstown. I have a question regarding the Mahabharata war and the Gita. I have never been able to come to terms with what Krishna did regarding the war. I have not been able to explain it to children. I used to run a Balvikas when my son was growing up. It was extremely hard to tell the kids, okay, this was what Krishna was encouraging Arjuna to do. And even to this day, I am in a sort of confused mind about how can he encourage Arjuna to do his action. Maybe it was for the good of the society and all that. Yeah, it was true. But then what happened after the war? Did Krishna achieve his motive was that the entire generations to come should be noble and good, right? So many things have happened in this long history of 5,000 years. Was there a better way of resolving the issue? And Bhagavad Gita he gave, and it's very difficult for us to convince our children. And Baba himself said in Rama and Krishna Avatara had to kill a few people, but now it's all just being good. What's your take on that?
I think you've asked a very deep question. I'm not sure if I'm going to justify with an answer. The essence of Bhagavad Gita is not about war or killing anyone at all. I think we missed the point with the symbolism of the story. The symbolism of the story is action. If you believe something, if that's your inner nature as a warrior, if you're a warrior, your job is to be a warrior. You can't be a preacher. When the call for action comes, don't start preaching. Then you're not a warrior. You're compromising on who you are completely. If a soldier in the country suddenly at the time of the war decides to become a preacher, then he's not a soldier. That is the nature of a warrior. Now you are not a warrior, so you cannot understand. It's not your inner call to be a warrior, so you will not understand what a warrior does, what's the job of a warrior, duty of a warrior, right? But why was that warrior used as a symbol? Because the warrior is the epitome of action. He's there, his life can go off in a second. He's out there fighting for a cause, not for himself. He's not fighting because somebody hurt him, his feelings. He's fighting for a cause. Can you give up your life for a cause? That is the question there. And if that cause is dharma, can you go to that extent of going into that action without any fear of death or loss? So that was the essence of Krishna's teaching, and that is what we need to teach our children. It's not about war at all, because dharma can change. What dharma existed 5,000 years ago, that same dharma doesn't exist today. Right? That dharma doesn't exist today. Dharma changes, but values don't change. You cannot compromise on values. You cannot switch values because it becomes convenient for you. That is what you and I do today. We may not be Arjunas, we may not be called upon warriors. We believe in truth and all of that, but or something like peace or selflessness, for example. But when sometimes suddenly a situation comes, we begin to patronize ourselves and say, oh, you know what, that is okay, but I am simply normal, and we compromise. So that Gita's teaching is, wait a minute, if this is your nature, if this is what you believe, go and act. When that call comes for action, be the person to act. That is the essence we have to teach our children, not anything else. They don't have, if they take to join the army or the navy or the air force, they're being trained for a very different reason. If that is their inner call, then you have to say, go ahead, fulfill your life's mission with that inner call. Because in the ultimate analysis, because this is a very mature question, in the ultimate analysis, your ability to allow expression of what you really want to do in life is fulfillment of that life, whatever that is. When you truly allow that, then you will find fulfillment. And that was the essence of Bhagavad Gita. And Vyasa chose that scenario, Krishna chose that scenario so that it will become a strong message that will last for centuries, that when it's time to act, don't refrain from action. The war and other things are incidental. It is incidental. So I hope I made sense. That is important for us to take home.
Do I have time for a quick one more question?
And before you ask, let me finish that. So Krishna left and he did all that, but there's so much evil going on. Baba came and left, there is so much evil going on. We are waiting for gods to fix our problems. It's never going to happen. There will be 10,000 more avatars and nothing will change. That's why I started this talk of you and I don't transform ourselves. Which God can change us? It can never. They show us a way. Baba showed us a way. How? Without education, without money, without all this. Look what he did. Why don't you and I do that? But what we do, we'll say, oh, no, you are God. We'll wait for the next God to come. We will not change, but we wait for the next God to come. In the meantime, I'm going to harbor, watch CNN, watch this. Oh, this person is bad. That person is bad. Oh my gosh, I don't like this at all. And this and that. And so we engage in a same old gossip, same old quality, and nothing has changed. And we say when God came and went, nothing has changed. No, He's not come to change you and me. He's come to show us the path. The doctor gives you a path to recovery. And it's up to you to follow that strict regimen, take the pills or medicine on the time. You have to recover. The doctor cannot do that for you. Right? It is the same thing with every avatar, every teacher. They come, they show us the path. He has shown us a path for free education. Are we doing it? Perhaps we do, perhaps we don't. Free medicine, selflessness, everything He's shown us the way. It's up to us. And guess what? When each one of us decide to do that, automatically the world will be at a better place. But if we wait for somehow some God to come and fix it, it's not going to happen. So thank you.
Thank you so much. I just have a quick question, one more question. I like to see Baba as God. You know, I don't like to see him as a human being who walked on earth and did everything we did. Then that awe and the reverence is sort of diminished. I feel like that, but so what is wrong in worshipping him and drawing inspiration from him, rather than thinking, okay, he was also like us, born in a village and he did all that. He may be born in a village, but he still was a very evolved. He was his God himself. We are not. We cannot say we are gods and we can do what he did. And if we do what is within our capacity to do now, Suppose our ultimate goal is not to be born again. Is that whatever we do in this life is not enough to take us to that goal? So, it's just serving selflessly, and living very righteous life. Is that enough to take us across?
Absolutely, it's enough. But in selfless service, there is no I. There is no I. You don't exist. When a call for service comes, do you say, I don't have time, I have only this much time, I can do it on a weekend? That's not selfless service. So we are learning the idea of selfless service from Baba. Number one. Number two, yes, of course it's a divine thing to meditate upon him as God. I do. But then I also remind myself that when I call him God, it's a label I have put on him, and that definition of God is limited to my definition of God, not who he is really. Just because I call him God doesn't make me very great, because I have no idea what this term God means. Even Adi Shankara, I'm not Sunder here talking, even Adi Shankara talks in Saundarya Lahari. He says, Shiva Shaktya yukto yadi bhavati shakta prabhavitum nacha devam devo nakala kushala spanditamapi. And he goes on to saying, Katama krita punya prabhavati. How can I worship someone whom even Hari, Hara and Brahma, even they have not understood? How can I even worship you? How can I worship you? Because I don't even know who you are. So, to say, why can't I call Swami God and I'm going to call him God? You can. But always know that I am limited to my understanding of what God is, whatever that is. So we cannot enter into an attitude where I said, I have understood God, I am praising him as God. We have a very limited definition of what God is. And I'll end with this because it's a very nice quote. I was preparing for a debate. Last minute, I'm making it very short. Swami called me. I had my notes. I thought Swami will ask me, what are you going to speak about? Religion and spirituality it was. Religion and spirituality. Swami said, what are you going to speak? I said, I'm going to speak on, well, wait, he didn't ask that. He saw the notes and then he was talking other things. And then he asked, what is God? Swami, I immediately said, Swami, who is God or what is God? I'm coming very fast to this. What is God? I think he said, what is God? He said, Swami, God is love. Love is God. Because Swami said, right, it's easy. Oh, God is love, love is God. We are experts. Like that's why I said we are experts in coming up with answers and defining God. Easy. Swami said, oh. And? Oh, there is and to it? I mean, there is more? And says, Swami, God is omnipresent, omniscient, omnipotent. Oh. Wait, only in English or you can describe God in other language? I thought maybe I should tell in Sanskrit. I didn't know what to say. What is Swami asking this? And I said, God is, and he put his hand on my head. He said, Kuchora, because I was like, Kuchora, Kucho. Press my head down. I said, Kannu Musko. With his hand on top of my head, Kannu Musko. I said, close my eyes. When you talk about God, are you thinking of words to describe God or are you thinking of God? I was looking into his eyes, he was looking into my eyes, and I said, in my mind, I was like, oh gosh, I'm only thinking of words to describe. Because the mind, after a point, cannot fathom what that is. So it is trying to define it the way the mind can understand. The mind can only go up to where the senses is. Beyond the senses, you're fast asleep. Mind doesn't exist. It doesn't know. But God exists far more than that. So how can we even define that, right? And anyway, at that point, I'm just looking at Swami, I'm looking at him. Kucho, Kandu Musko. Ippudu cheppu. I sat. I realized I'm looking for words, and that's not, Swami is not going to like it. He's not accepting it. So I closed my eyes. I said, God is. I was going to say something. I didn't know what it was. I just let it go. God is. Ade. He cut me off. Adera. Ade. Answer Nidhi. I was like, wait, I've not answered anything. I was incomplete. I just said, God is. Adera. Ade answer. Is. It took me a while to understand that that was a complete statement, not an incomplete statement. God is. Devudu unnadu. Then every other word you add is only an adjective, a description of that God based on your limited understanding of what God is. But God simply is. God is, that is spirituality. And everything else that follows that, that is religion. God is great, God is love, God is omniscient, God is omnipotent. All that belief system we build around God is religion. God is spirituality.
Intellect with our limited senses, how can we understand God?
We cannot understand with our limited sense. We cannot understand God. Stop understanding God. We cannot understand God. We can understand ourselves. We can understand what the self is not. We can understand, and when we start breaking, that's why even Adi Shankara, and I don't want to, this is a beautiful and interesting thought, because he says there's a place where even the mind cannot go. Turiya Avastha is pratasmarami hridi samsfuradatma tattvam satchit sukham paramahamsa gatim turiyam. So the manas doesn't go there, the mind cannot go there. So you and I can never intellectualize, only to a point. After that the mind stops, and it should. That's why meditation is the way. In meditation, in deep prayer, in contemplation, in bhakti, the mind gives up and the spirit opens. Then you experience God. There is no description, you experience. There is nothing, you can't come back and tell a story. Ramakrishna told Vivekananda, the salt doll goes into the ocean. To measure the depths of the ocean, you have a rope putting the salt doll down, thinking, let us see how deep the ocean is. You think the salt doll is going to come back? No, it will merge into the ocean. There is no coming back. If you have truly experienced God, you won't be here. The I merges into the divinity. The river merges into the ocean. Only ocean exists. Thank you so much for that question. I wish we had answers. We don't. And that's the beauty of it. That is the beauty of it. Thank you so much for all your patience.
Om Jai Jagadish Hare Swami Satya Sai Hare Bhakta Jana Samrakshaka Bhakta Jana Samrakshaka Pati Maheshwara. Om Jai Jagadish Hare Shashivadana Shrikara Sarva Pranapate Swami Sarva Pranapate Ashrita Kalpalatika Ashrita Kalpalatika Apad Bandhava. Om Jai Jagadish Hare Mata Pita Guru Devamu Mari Antayunive Swami Mari Antayunive Nada Brahma Jagannatha Nada Brahma Jagannatha Nagendra Shayana. Om Jai Jagadish Hare Omkara Rupa Ojasvi Sai Mahadeva Satya Sai Mahadeva Mangala Aarati Anduko Mangala Aarati Anduko Mandara Giridhari. Om Jai Jagadish Hare Narayana Narayana Om Satya Narayana 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 Om Narayana Narayana Om Satya Narayana Narayana Om Satya Narayana Narayana Om. Om Jai Sadguru Deva Narayana Narayana Om Satya Narayana 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 Om Narayana Narayana Om Satya Narayana Narayana Om Satya Narayana Narayana Om. Om Jai Sadguru Deva Narayana Narayana Om Satya Narayana 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 Om Narayana Narayana Om Satya Narayana Narayana Om Satya Narayana Narayana Om. Om Jai शांति शांतिः समस्तलोकाः सुखिनो भवन्तु समस्तलोकाः सुखिनो भवन्तु समस्तलोकाः सुखिनो भवन्तु ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः जय बोलो भगवान श्री सत्य साई बाबा जी की जय।